Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome our guest, Doug Foresta. Hi, Doug. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me, Jen.
Good. Well, I guess our role has been reversed this time. Last time I was on your show. And,
that's right.
Yeah, that was great. And I had a great time.
Thank you.
So hopefully we will have, not hopefully, I know we will have a great time now too. So this time I'm going to ask you a lot of questions so you can share your story, your information with our wonderful listeners, right?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. So before we get into the, break free to success topic, can you share your time at, when you're a child, what kind of a child you were and what your childhood dreams were and things like that?
Sure. Do you want me to give you a little bit of, just a little bit of my background?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I had a very interesting life. It's not over yet, so it's still interesting. And I was born in New York City. My mother was Jewish, my father was Italian.
Oh.
And when my father married my mother, he said that he would convert to Judaism.
Oh.
And he did. And my father was in the military. He works for the DOD, but Department of Defense. But we grew up always around military bases, so.
Wow! So we have something in common.
I was going to say we have something in common. Yes, absolutely.
My father was, and I was in the military, and for 20 years, and my daughter is in the Army now.
Right, and I know your daughter was an Army brat, right?
Uh-huh.
So we moved around. We moved around quite a bit, and in that time, my parents became sort of more and more religious, and within the Jewish religion. And so that by the time I was about 8 years old, we ended up becoming Orthodox. I don't know if you know anything or listeners know anything about Orthodox Jews, but if you've ever been to New York or certain places, you might see them.
Yeah, I knew some Jewish professors from the school I was attending in New York, but I don't know that much about, into details.
Well, it was very, the interesting thing was I always had. It's a very much like the emphasis, especially for boys. The emphasis really is on learning the Talmud, and it's very much like the law, learning these laws. And I always had an interest in writing. I always had an interest in doing creative things, and there wasn't as much focus on that. And so I guess early on in my childhood, I sort of had this tension between doing, wanting to do creative things, but not necessarily having an outlet for them.
Oh, okay. So, what was your childhood dream? Did you have a dream when you were a child, or?
Yes. My childhood, what I used to do, Jen, that I loved all the time when I was little, is I used to make these carnivals. I would get everybody together in the neighborhood, and I would make these carnivals for the neighborhood. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this book. It's called The Great Brain. And The Great Brain. It's a kid's book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's still in print, but it was about this kid who they called him the Great Brain. And he always came up with all these schemes, him and his brother, for all these people in the neighborhood, and he would create these carnivals and events. And I always wanted to be the Great Brain. I liked creating sort of, carnivals and events and getting people together and doing something fun and creative. So.
Okay. So this radio talk show and your theater, you taught the theater, right?
Yes.
So all those, I guess, that matches up with your childhood, lifestyle in a way. But yeah, that your radio talk show title is "Break Free to Success."
Yes.
And in your own word, what do you mean by break free to success?
Sure. I'll give you the short answer, and then if you want, I'll give you the longer answer. The short answer is that my mission is, I say, to help extraordinary creative people break free from limiting beliefs. Now, I believe all people are extraordinary creative people. That's the secret. But what I do is, what Break Free to Success is about, it's about this idea of, breaking free from these stuck places, whatever keeps you stuck.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that's very important. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
I was just giving you some space.
Okay.
I could go on forever, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. I mean, we have next 3 segments to talk about a lot of things about breakthrough to success
Sure.
and the stress management and importance of creativity and all those stuff. So let's start with this. You want to help people to use their creativity for their own success and overcome stress. And so, how do you help people overcome stress?
Sure, absolutely. I guess where I'd start with that is just to say that I think that there's a lot of great people who do stress management stuff. There's fantastic people that do breathing exercises, people that do, and I use that stuff, and it's great. But what I do really is come from a very different place, because I'll talk more about my, what I do today, but I work with people who are in pretty dire straits. And in my own life, I've had a lot of experiences of feeling very stuck and feeling like, how am I going to get out of here? And I believe that the best news in life is that as human beings, our greatest gift is that we can create better circumstances for ourselves. And you are a perfect example of that, Jen. It wasn't that you did deep breathing and then you became successful. That certainly may have been an important part, but you created a new life for yourself. You created the circumstances. You created, the American dream. Yeah. And so that's really what I try to help people move out of stress by using their creativity to create better circumstances in their lives.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And the place I was born and raised, the place called Korea, and as I was growing up in, a long time ago, it was a very stressful situation, and I have to find a way to help me how to, overcome the stress and survive. And one of the methods was giving me the dreams, and it's a vision, visualizing it, and when I become successful and what I'm going to look like and what I will be doing, and just the dreaming. All those things were helping me to overcome those stress, under that stressful situation. And I have my own answer about the importance of creativity, but since you're the guest, then I will let you answer it. Why
I'll give you mine, but then I want to hear yours.
Okay.
The importance of creativity for me is this. I'll talk later about this, but I've worked with some people and some pretty serious, people that have had losses, people that have had people, they've lost loved ones, or they're really in, places where they live in bad neighborhoods and nobody's ever gotten out. I teach writing, and I teach writing to young people and to adults. And I had these 2 kids come in, and they said, our father is in Iraq, and we've had a lot of pain in our lives, but we always write, and we always dance, and we always sing, and that helps us survive. I think that's the most important thing about creativity, is without creativity and imagination, we can't overcome obstacles. I think that's the gift that we have as human beings, that we can do that.
Yeah, and there's no limit to the creativity and no limit to the imagination.
That's right.
And they are there for, you don't need any permission from anybody to use that. And they are just an amazing tool, and they can offer you amazing power. The Jack Canfield, right?
Yes.
And that's Brian Tracy and all those amazing people. They when they give speeches and they get paid amazing amount of money too, right?
Yeah.
And their success strategy, one of them is that visualize your vision as vividly as possible. And then, the universe will respond, your wish is my command, or, so you can get amazing things accomplished by visualizing, and in the vision you can create the world you want to live in, the person you want to become. So I think that what you are saying is so true, and I really agree with you. So before we talk about that creative background, you said you have a very important message to our audience about health.
I do have a very important message. I'm Mr. Overcome Stress, but I actually ended up in the emergency room getting an IV because I didn't realize how dehydrated I was.
Oh my God!
And I thought I was drinking enough water. I drink when I get thirsty, and that don't do that. You have to drink at least 8 glasses of water a day. In the hot summer, you should drink probably 10 to 12. And I'm really careful now because I just dropped, and that was a scary experience. So I don't want to go through that again. I would definitely encourage everyone out there, drink a lot of water, and you don't realize how much fluid you lose when it's hot out.
Yeah, and I guess that's not from your own creative background, but
well, it's from my own life.
Yeah, and so we was start talking about your own creative background on the previous segment. So can you share that with our audience now?
Absolutely, definitely. I'm a playwright. I teach theater. Obviously, I do radio as well. I think we do a creative. I think this is a creative endeavor. But I started writing when 1996 seriously, and I really enjoyed it. And I started also teaching when I was living in New York. I also started teaching playwriting to kids in the inner city in the settlement houses. One called Henry Street Settlement on the Lower East Side in New York City. It's one of the oldest settlement houses, and for people that don't know what that is, it's basically like it was a social work place where people could come and get, poor families could get all kinds of services. So I created the first playwriting program there that they ever had, and I've been teaching. I've been writing and teaching writing for the last 14 years. 14 years now.
Wow! And any books you published so far?
I'm working on a book for next year. But I've had several plays produced, and I've won awards for playwriting, and really enjoy. I've actually worked with kids as young as 9 years old and people as old as 80, and we've produced in the last 8 years. I've been teaching here in Springfield, Massachusetts, and we've had about 40 plays produced by children that were written by children.
Wow. Well, I introduced that from 8 to 80, but
exactly.
Sure there was one guy with 8 years old, right? So,
yes, exactly.
So, and what new services are you currently working on?
So one of the big things that I'm really working on is really about, one of the big things I really want to do is I'm really working on the show. I really want the show to be, the show that I do, a Blog Talk radio show, I really want to have that be a service for, that really want that to be a community for creative people. And I think I'm finding some really interesting people like yourself that have a lot to say about living a creative life. So that's been a really big part of building up. I also do, I do speaking. I'm also working on doing I want to put together a teleseminar series. So that's one of the things that I'm working on too. Is one of the things I'm really looking at is how can I serve, how can I really serve in this calling that I feel to help people tap into their creativity. And right now, definitely the radio show, working on some teleseminars. And I'm working on some ebooks and some other things. So, but the radio show is really, I think, one of the biggest things that I'm putting my energy into right now.
And you can, when you teach creativity, you can always use my story to prove your points. You're
Absolutely. In fact, I plan to, Jen. I'm going to be doing a presentation in New Jersey in September 1st, and I do actually plan to talk about your story because these are teachers that are going through, like a lot of them have been fired, and they're going through a really hard time. And I do plan to actually share about your story. So
yeah, especially what the part that I became that PhD from Harvard when I was 57 years old, right?
That's right.
And then that dream was my childhood dream, which began from the 6th grader, and that began by my teacher's remark. I asked my teacher, I want to become successful, and what would be considered a success? And he said, becoming a PhD.
Yes.
And so I said, well, what do I have to do to become a PhD? And he said, well, study well. So from then on, I studied, really hard, and every time whenever I had a chance. And so that dream, drove me to be successful, and that dream was given by my teacher. One word from my teacher almost changed my life.